Today's presentation will be about our leather general purpose work gloves. Now, you will see in your training that the gloves have been split in multiple videos. We encourage you to watch this one first, as we will start with a broad explanation of how the work gloves are categorized. Mark?
Thank you, Danny. So work gloves basically have many purposes, right? So it's hand protection, first of all, and what is it protecting it against? And depending on what the glove is, will protect against different things, right? So in particular, the first thing, of course, has always been abrasion. Working with heavy-duty materials like raw wood or brick. You know, back in the day when we were building supplies, we're building houses and things like that. Well, you were dealing with stuff that would create a lot of problems for your hands, and so originally it was all about abrasion. So abrasion was one. Today we've introduced pneumatic tools and things like that. So another property of a glove could be vibration, and when you have anti-vibration gloves in there, there's added value features to it that will absorb the vibration. That is another thing we're protecting against. Temperature, whether it be a winter work glove or even, so that would be extreme cold, and in some cases extreme heat, where you're dealing with furnaces and stuff. There are gloves out there made for heat or welding. And the other thing, of course, is chemicals. So whether it be keeping your hands dry from just water or chemical resistance, I highly suggest that anytime you're talking to a client about chemicals, that you refer to a chemical resistance chart. And a chemical resistance chart can be found by Google. You just chemical resistance chart on Google will come up, and then you'll find a lot of the different chemical resistant properties of things like the components that make up a glove, like latex or nitrile or whatever. And we can go over that in detail at some point together, face to face, because it's an important aspect of offering gloves to clients. So what materials are gloves made from? In general, everybody thinks of a work glove as being a leather glove. Yes, indeed. We've seen lots of leather gloves out in the marketplace. Cotton is another component that gloves are made of. So usually you'll see a leather glove made up of a component of cotton and leather. And the lining could be in acrylic or polyester, brushed flannels. Other components are things like latex, so natural rubber, nitrile, which is a synthetic rubber, which gives a little bit more resistance to certain types of chemicals. PVC, again, PVC used in a lot of water-resistant properties. The different leathers. So, one leather is not necessarily the same as another. Depending on what the animal comes from, will give different properties. So, for instance, deerskin offers a little bit more heat retention than typical cowhide. Cow grain versus cow split, the source of the leather, depending on what part of the animal it comes from, will dictate how durable it is and how comfortable it is, how soft it is. Other animals that are used are pig. Pig skin is very popular. Goat skin is very popular for its toughness and thin properties. Get nice dexterity with a very thin leather, and a tough leather. Most gloves are constructed in just 2 or 3 different ways. So Dan, if you pass me the first one on the top, you'll see a typical, I'll just hold on to it, Danny, for you, because basically, what are the components of a work glove? Basically, in this particular case, you're looking at a fitter style glove, which when you see this knuckle patch across the back with the cotton, this is what we call a fitter style glove. It is made up of a cuff, and there's a lot of different kinds of cuffs. In this particular case, the cuff is just a cheap pasted cuff. It's basically a little piece of cheesecloth pasted onto a piece of cotton to give a cuff the appearance of a cuff, something that will allow you to pull it onto your hand properly. It's sewn onto the cotton and the leather on this side, and then the rest of it's made up of leather and cotton, as you can see, with a full index finger, fingertips to protect the fingertip, and the knuckle patch to protect the knuckles from when you are creating abrasion. And basically, this is probably the cheapest leather glove you'll find in the marketplace. It is made from split leather, split being the underside of a piece of leather, right? So you have the exterior, which is the smooth grain, and the split. It's cow grain in particular is so thick that you can literally split it, hence the reason they call it split, and create different thicknesses. In this case, this is about as thin as you're going to get a leather, it is considered to be, from an A grade, A, B, C, D grade point of view, a C, D grade. So it's going to be the cheapest thing you can be out there. And what is A, B, C, D? Basically, depending on what part of the cow it comes from, how thick it is, how soft it is graded accordingly. And the lower the grade, D, the worse quality, the less consistent you're going to have, the less thick it's going to be. So grade AB is about the best you're going to get in a leather work glove. If it was a pure A grade, they'd probably be making a leather jacket out of it or something like that, or a couch. Leather gloves are usually made of scrap pieces of leather from the manufacturer of these type of things. So here you have something that's, who knows what part of the cow that was from, but very uncomfortable glove, but still called for as a disposable type of product. Moving up into the next level, you have basically another split leather glove, but made from a higher level grade of leather, so probably an ABC grade, and it has the added value of, number one, we change the cuff. This particular case, it's made of a rubberized cuff, so there's actually a piece of rubber with the cotton glued to it, and so it offers protection now for your wrist. If you're in an abrasive situation or a place where it could actually cut, that rubberized cuff could protect your arm, could protect your wrist very nicely, and it'll also pull on a little bit easier because it offers some body to it.
Now, while we're talking about cuffs, Mark, there are 3 different types of cuffs.
Yes.
Can you explain the different properties of each one?
So pasted cuff is what we talked about in the cheap version. Basically, it's, for lack of a way of putting it, it's basically the cheapest thing out there, and it gives an appearance of a cuff. It allows you to pull the glove on, but offers no protection. In between this one and the rubberized cuff is what we call a PE cuff. And they've created the PE cuff because there's an industry for washing leather gloves, and rubberized cuffs don't wash well. When you wash a rubberized cuff, it tends to melt in the heat, or it will come undone. The glue doesn't stay well to it, and so the rubberized cuff is not a washable product. PE they created, it gives the impression of a rubberized cuff, offers protection of a rubberized cuff, but it is made of different materials so that it washes better. In general, we either do a rubberized cuff or we do a pasted cuff. We don't have call for a PE cuff at this stage of the game. So this particular glove, we go to this double palm. It's basically the same style as that, but with higher quality leather, and with the added feature of a double palm on the palm, so that, and index and thumb, so that when they're dealing with high abrasion materials like brick and wood, it'll just last that much longer. So these are the wear points. We call this the thumb crotch, and this is a wear point here, and in the palm is a wear point when you're working hard. Those areas will fall apart first, so the double palm offers extra longevity for this style of glove. The next style of glove is very similar to what we just saw. Added feature is that we now have a cotton drill, so it has a better appearance, a thicker cotton in the back of the hand. The cotton will allow for a little bit more durability and a better appearance than the standard straight back that you see in regular work gloves. So it becomes a little bit more of a retail item. We add the value of having more of an AB grade leather so that it's a little bit softer, a little bit more consistent from one glove to the next, so that it will appear nice on the shelves. So
But it is split leather.
Yes.
So it's important to understand that while we have A through D as far as leather grades, we also have the distinction between grain and split leather. So in the split leather, you'll have A through D, and in the grain leather, which is the leather you've most commonly seen in jackets and in couches, where it's a lot more polished as a finish, you'll have also from A through D. And what distinguishes whether it's an A or D is the scarring, it's the use, it's the thickness of it. So it's very important that we understand all of that, because the price points obviously are not the same. Typically, grain leather is more expensive than split leather, and then within those categories, A is obviously more expensive than the D quality.
Thank you, Danny. So this covers the split leather options that we have in the marketplace. Not the marketplace, from Wipeco. There's a lot of other options out there, but basically we've created a glove that offers both the double palm version and the drill, so more retail, more heavy duty. Guys who are working all day long in raw wood, for instance, love this glove because it will last that much longer, and it has the added feature of having not only the double palm and double index and thumb, but the double in the fingertips as well. So this is glove for highly abrasive environments, brick, raw wood, stuff like that. It'll last a long time and offer good protection.
And what type of cuff do we have on it?
This is also rubberized cuff, so very good protection on the wristing, the drill for the extra longevity so it stays together longer, and the extra thick AB leather on the palm so that it'll last a long time.
It's also colored split leather. Is there a difference between the gray and the blue?
Well, in general, colored split usually means that it's a little bit more pliable, especially the fact that, you know, this is a double thickness. It's important that the leather remains pliable, and so by dyeing the leather, it becomes a little bit softer, becomes a little bit more pliable, hence the reason why it is green on the second layer.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but does it not also sometimes allow some of the manufacturers to hide some imperfections? Use lower
Yes.
quality leather, perhaps a C or a D, but by dyeing it, you don't see any of those defects as much?
It's a very good point, Danny, because one of the things we have to be careful with economy work gloves, especially when you start seeing the patch palm versions in dyed leather, chances are they are hiding some imperfection. Danny's mentioned a couple. It could be some scarring, it could be a hole in the glove or whatever. The one thing you really have to be careful of is mold. Dyeing a moldy leather will kill the mold and allow you to put it to market. Now, kill the leather is not something that, or kill the leather.
Kill the mold.
Kill the mold is not necessarily going to happen 100%. So if you see a really, really cheap leather out there that's dyed, there's a pretty good chance that it had been moldy at one point. And what that happens with mold is, number one, you know, it might still contain some of that mold, and number two, the mold is eaten away at the leather, so the durability of the leather could be super tender. Tender meaning that you can do this and just tear it with your fingers. So be careful of dyed leather in economy gloves. So this would be a good example of grain leather. So this is the outside of leather, the smooth portion of it. Again, a fitter style. The key feature here is that we've added this is made from leftover leather, so made from patch palm. This is a patch. These are one little piece of leather, another little piece of leather, and then another little piece of leather put together to make an economy work glove. Now, you would think that if you look at this, you think double palm or something like that. There's actually no leather in between here. It is just sewn together, and it is a true patch. From a workman's point of view, the liability here is that these seams that are in the palm can get caught and reduce the longevity of the glove. So that is a downside to it. Aside from that, though, the leather quality, because we dictate to our supplier what leather quality to use, we tell them to use ABC. You will find that the consistency of this leather is really nice because we dictate to our supplier to make sure that it is a generous fit. It is a good size, large, something that a man who's got a workman's hand, you know, the thicker, wider hand, will fit very comfortably in it. So good value for this particular product. Even if it is an economy glove, it still offers good value. The next glove up, in terms of cost or pricing, is again a grain leather, fitter style, rubberized cuff glove. The only real difference, there's two things. Number one, it's not made from patch palm, it's a full palm lining, so it costs more money to produce, and it won't catch when you're working in any kind of materials that can catch onto your palm, so the durability of the palm will be there. And we don't put a lining in the palm. Most of these gloves are palm lined to absorb the perspiration and to offer a little bit more comfort. In this particular case, it's done on purpose not to put a lining. For what reason? Anybody who's working in an environment but creates a lot of particles like wood chips and stuff like that, because of the way it's constructed, the wood chips tend to go into the cuff, and if you have a palm lining, those wood chips can get stuck in the palm lining, basically ruining your glove. You can't use it because it's very hard to get them out. In this case, you can simply shake your glove and anything that's been fallen in just falls out. You can go back and use it over and over again. The other feature that I really like about no palm lining is leather has as you perspire into the leather and it becomes humid, it has kind of a form-fitting property to it. So when you have it on your hand and you're wearing it and you're perspiring, it fits to your hand, and as it dries, it'll maintain that shape. So when you put your hand in again and again and again, it kind of forms to your hand and gives you a nice dexterity. So higher dexterity, form-fitting, and allows you to clean the glove easier without having the palm lining.
Now, we've been mentioning lining since the beginning of this presentation. I just want to make sure it's very clear. So the lining is essentially what we find on the inside of a glove. In this case, there are no lining, which means that if you were to look inside, or if I were to turn this upside down, you would see that it's the leather. There is nothing in between this and the leather, which is on the outside. What Mark is showing on the left here is one where there is a lining. And this brings up the opportunity to speak about the different options as far as linings. What are the different lining options that we offer?
Well, I'll talk about palm lining first of all. With an economy work glove, we talked about one in particular that's here. These are 2 economy work gloves. And what they're basically doing here is, from one pair to the next, you're never going to see the same lining. For a simple reason is they're using scrap textiles. Because it's economy, this is just a
polka dot.
a little piece of cotton left over from somewhere. It's scrap textile. This is actually a piece of fleece, so it's a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, 100% polyester, so it'll maybe absorb the perspiration a little bit better than the cotton will, but it'll offer an element of comfort. But if you were to take another pair like that and look at it, that fleece might be red, or it might be yellow, or it might be orange. It's made from scrap leather. The difference between an economy work glove and a higher end work glove is the palm lining will always be the same in a higher end work glove. It'll always be, if you dictate to your supplier, I want to have a nice cotton fleece in the palm, white or red or whatever the color you may want to be, you will get that. In the case of the next step up, if we look at the lining, you will probably see a nice fleece in there that is, what color, Danny?
White.
It is
Or gray.
white gray. So in this case, we've dictated to the supplier, we want to have a nice absorbent palm lining in a very consistent, so from one pair to the next, it'll always be the same. So that's part of what makes up better value, the consistency in the product, and in terms of the leather as well as in the lining. This is one example of
So palm lining is our cheapest option. What are the other options in lining that we can find in all of our gloves?
Well, the linings, usually when you get beyond the palm lining, you're talking about an insulation against the elements, whether it be heat or against cold weather. So depending on how cold it is, you will then look at different linings like just a full cotton lining. So instead of just in the palm, the whole hand is covered so that it reduces heat, cold from coming in from the back of the hand, and it offers a little bit of an insulation property. So little cotton is one, a little cotton with a little bit of foam added to it offers one step up in terms of heat retention. Then you get into pile lining, which is like artificial sheepskin in different thicknesses. And the highest end lining that we see in the marketplace is Thinsulate. Thinsulate is super thin, but has heat retention properties that were developed by 3M, which work quite well. Very high dexterity and good heat retention properties at the same time. And Thinsulate can get even more complicated, and it's available in different thicknesses. We do everything from a 340 gram per square meter material up to 150, which is the thickest you can get for a work glove, gram per square meter material in some of our gloves. So we're going to talk about winter work gloves in another section. That comes into much more detail in the future. So the next step up in bringing up the value of the glove, we've now introduced drill again. Instead of it being split, this time it's a grain leather, and the cotton is nice and thick. It's got some good durability, and the leather quality is now AB grade. So meaning that from one pair to the next, from one dozen to the next, you're going to get nice, consistent leather from right throughout. So we talked about the palm lining. It's going to have a nice, comfortable, thick palm lining in there. And
the cuff is?
Rubberized cuff again. Rubberized cuff is the industry standard. You will see most of our gloves being, when they have this format, the fitter style, it will be a rubberized cuffing.
So Mark, these are all leather gloves, and our natural instinct is to think that leather comes from cow. But as actually a lot of our gloves come from different types of leather. So what are the different options of leather that we may find in our gloves?
Well, we've had all sorts of leathers here, Danny. We've had, basically, cow is what we carry now, cow split and cow grain. We do have deer skin, which we'll talk about in the very near future. We do have goat skin. Each one of these leathers offers different properties. In the case of deer skin, super soft, super comfortable. You put it on your hand, it's like, wow, that's comfortable. And its own natural heat retention properties, where you can just have leather against your hand in a relatively cold environment and you'll still feel warm.
It's also the most expensive option, I believe.
Well, for that reason, not many deer out there, and number one, so availability of leather is limited, and the properties are well sought after, so they can get the bigger bang for their buck. The goat skin, on the other hand, is kind of the opposite. It's a thinner material, a little tougher, but it'll offer better dexterity because it's not anywhere near as thick as the deer skin or the cow grain, and for that reason it's very popular for guys who want to have something that's super tough and thin. And then the cow grain is basically the best value because it's most readily available. But there's other animals that offer leather that work quite well for work gloves. Pig skin is also very popular in the industry, and it has its own inherent properties in that it's somewhat more water resistant than most leathers that are out there. We see a little bit of pigskin in our market. We don't carry any pigskin at this point in time, but it is available. I've seen camel. Camel is a beautiful leather. Our patch palm gloves many years ago were all made of camel. We used to carry that on a regular basis. And in the higher end quality of camel, it is super soft and super abrasion resistant. It is a really nice leather. And there's other animals as well. And don't be fooled. When they say cow, sometimes it could be water buffalo. Water buffalo is one of the worst leathers out there. So if you hear of a buffalo as opposed to cow grain, be wary, because buffalo is not a very good leather.
And it's important to know also that no matter what the type of leather it is available in both grain and in split leather. So again, the grain being the top part, and the split, because it's a thick piece of leather, we are able to split it in half. So the second portion on the bottom is the split, which is most commonly known as a texture. It looks like suede as a leather. Correct. That you will see.
Yeah. So the next glove is, we're now changing styles away from the fitter style into a driver style. Driver style basically is all leather, usually without any lining, or certainly in the summer wheat, no lining whatsoever. This particular one is the style that we carry that has a full grain palm and a split back. Why split back? To bring the price down. So you can save as much as $1 a pair by going to the split back instead of full grain. We're trying to bring value to our clients. It doesn't change the durability, longevity of the glove, nor the fit. So split back is a good option to keep the price down. In this particular case, a driver style glove does not have any lining. Like we talked about with the fitter style that had no lining, the glove will form to your hand as your hands are working and becomes humid. It form-fitting, retains the form of the hand, gives you a little bit better dexterity, and a little bit more expensive because it's all leather. The cotton tends to be less expensive than the leather, so the driver styles always tend to be a little bit more expensive than the fitter style.
And why do we call it driver style?
I'm not sure the history behind it, but obviously, drivers like this glove. When you're driving a truck, this is what they would be wearing in general, so it was...
So they do look like the driver's gloves, the leather gloves that you may wear while driving your car, holding the steering wheel. But obviously, in this case, we're referring to the drivers of trucks or lift trucks or any other type of automobile or vehicle that's used.
So the construction of this glove is interesting because we've put together basically the best of the best construction without reducing the value. And I'll just go back to this one, Danny, simply because, from a value point of view, we haven't compromised on the construction of this glove. It is still put together in such a way that allows it to be some of the best constructed gloves out there. And why do I say that is because there's different ways of constructing driver-style gloves. The wing thumb version, where you have the natural motion of your thumb, this is constructed in a way that's going to fit that natural motion. It's going to be super comfortable. Your wear points are going to be in places that the leather is in a good spot, not in a seam. And so the durability of this glove, the comfort of the glove will be higher than the alternative. And the alternative is they have what they call a straight thumb construction, where the thumb is made like this, and it's not a natural fit. When you're working your thumb, you're actually working against the leather, and the comfort level is not there. It will be more economical, but it won't be as comfortable, and it will wear out faster because the wear point is in the seam. So recognize the construction of the thumb is very important, that if it's not constructed properly, it reduces the comfort and reduces the durability of the glove. So same style, the only difference is full leather back. Some people insist this is the standard in the industry and they want to have the full leather back. This is what most people are calling for, versus the split back. Exactly the same glove except split back versus full grain back. So same idea, no palm lining, form-fitting leather, tight fit, sizes small through double or triple extra large in all cases to fit the big man hand. And a little bit more expensive, runs about $1 more for the full grain versus the split.
And you bring up sizes, Mark. Now, often in the industry, we'll hear of course, what we know, small, medium, large, and extra large. But there's also numbers ranging from 7 all the way up to 13 or 14.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference between one and the other?
Okay, well, basically, nomenclature in this, it varies from one company to the next. Some people will use lettering, small, medium, large, extra large, double extra large, or they'll use a numeric shift. So over our history, we've kind of combined both. We have some part numbers that start out with 7, 8, 9. It equates to 7 being extra small, 8 being small, 9 being medium, 10 being large, 11 being extra large, 12 being double extra large, and we go as far as 13 with the triple extra large. Not all of the styles are available in all these sizes, but there are a few that are. You make inquiries for the big man hands, we can direct you in terms of, and on the price list you will see that the range of sizes are shown there, and you can see that quite easily.
So if a client asks you for a size 10, you know that he's referring to a large size that he's looking for.
Correct. So another style in drivers is made from deerskin. We talked about deerskin, the properties of deerskin, basically naturally, inherently retains heat very well, super soft and comfortable, well sought after, so because of the comfort level, so it is expensive, but some people are willing to pay for this super comfortable glove. It is constructed in the best way possible to give the best value. So for instance, in this case, our thumb is no longer made of a wing thumb, but what we call an inset thumb, which is just as comfortable as wing thumb, and but it is less expensive to construct simply because it's made from a smaller amount of leather. So deerskin driver's gloves, no palm lining, super comfortable, form-fitting, fits to the hand, informs to the hand, even especially after getting a little bit of humidity in there and wearing it for a little while. So what size glove is that? That's a size large, right, Danny?
Or a size 10.
Yes. So that one fits you very well. You're not allowed to bring it home though. All right. So moving on to, we talked about linings and different properties of glove. A heat-resistant glove or a welding glove is the next style up. Welding glove, very simply, is to protect yourself from heat or sparks when you're welding. This is constructed in such a way as to offer, number one, if you see the construction of the fingers, it has a welting in there. So there's a piece of leather, the stitching is on the inside of the glove, the leather on the outside of the glove. It prevents the sparks or the heat from getting to the sewing, which would eventually fall apart in the heat and stop it from being useful. So there's a welting in here to allow for longevity to be longer. The leather is an AB grade, so it's
split leather.
Split leather for durability and heat resistance. Cow grain will not last as well in the heat as the split. It also has a lining in it, so that this lining is an insulation from the heat. It is just a cotton drill that's a pretty heavy duty, and just enough that when they're welding, it'll give them the properties of heat resistance that they require. So welting in there is important, the protection being 14 inches long, and the insulation to allow for the heat resistance. The next glove is what we call a TIG or MIG welder. It is made from sheepskin super, super, super thin, high dexterity, meant to be used as in MIG TIG welding. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's fine welding. It's really, really super fine. You need to have good dexterity, and this is meant to have an excellent touch. So available in stock in sizes, medium through extra large. It has the properties required for MIG and TIG welding: protection of the arm and the dexterity in the hand. No lining in the palm. We're going to change categories. We're going to go into mechanic style gloves here. These are specialty gloves meant to be used for activity gloves, or the guys who want to have super dexterity and a little bit of fashion at the same time. From a practicality point of view, it is a very practical glove. What you have is a breathable spandex back. So the spandex offers elasticity. Elasticity in the back of the hand, so when you put your hand in there, it'll stretch, it'll allow the hand to be tighter in the palm, so you get a better dexterity at the palm level. And then we combine it with a Velcro finish, so nothing can go inside of the glove, and it fits tight. You can close that really tight, so you get a nice tight fit to your hand. And secondly, it's made of goat skin. We talked about goat skin's properties being thin and tough. Goat skin, your hand's right on the leather here, and you get a good touch because of the thinness of the leather. So very popular style in mechanic style. Leather, unfortunately, is not a washable leather. It will shrink and wash. So, one of the properties of this particular mechanics glove is you can't be out there washing it, but it'll give you long use in a dry application. So the next one up is a synthetic leather. This was one of the first mechanics gloves that Wipeco introduced into the marketplace. And the interesting thing about this glove is that it has basically all the bells and whistles of a mechanics glove required. So I'm going to take this glove from Danny. I'd like to show you all the different properties about it. So starting with, first of all, a neoprene knuckle patch. So we looked at the fitter's glove. There's a piece of leather here to protect the knuckles, correct? Well, in this case, it's neoprene. And neoprene is a spongy fabric that if they kind of knock their knuckles against something, it's going to offer a good padding, so it protects the knuckles. A breathable spandex back, so your hand breathes and will stay dry. It has a reinforced thumb crotch here and index finger, so that the wear point here is reinforced so that it will not wear out as fast. And it's a synthetic leather, so you can wash it, put it in your laundry, it comes out like brand new afterwards, and you can wash it over and over again with not any issues. We've added an impregnation of polyurethane on the palm to give it an anti-slip finish. When doing this with a standard synthetic leather, it can get a little slippery. In this particular case with the polyurethane, from an abrasion resistance point of view, the longevity of this glove is quite nice. And two other features. One, you have a terry on the back of the thumb to be able to wipe whatever happens to be perspiring at that particular moment. It's a nice feature. I know myself, when I bike and my forehead is getting all sweaty and it's starting to get into my glasses, just one little wipe like that, it does a great job. If you do that with a standard pair of mechanics gloves or leather gloves, chances are you're going to scratch yourself because those seams can be pretty rough. This terry is nice and soft and very absorbent, especially once it's been washed once, does a nice job. And lastly, you have neoprene in the wristing for the same reason. It offers a lot of stretch and will form fit to your arm without cutting off your circulation. So you get a really, really tight, high dexterity glove, all the bells and whistles necessary in a mechanic style glove for well under $10 a pair. The last style is the same version of the glove except in a more economical glove. So different price point, a little bit more like a 33% off, but we've taken away a couple of features that are on the more deluxe model. In this particular case, it has an elastic instead of a neoprene wristing. Again, you can still torque it pretty nice to get it tight onto your hand. It does a nice job from that point of view. And a breathable back, but it's no longer spandex. The knuckles has some foam in it instead of the neoprene, so it still offers that protection that you want. And double fingertips in the three wear points with a little bit of padding in the palm for anti-vibration. So take away the terry, take away the neoprene, take away the polyurethane and polyurethane palm. This glove is a little bit less expensive, but actually, from a value point of view, still very, very comfortable, very, very good pricing. Actually, our most popular mechanic style glove at this point in time.
Now, Mark, we've talked about sizing, we've explained the ratios. The question I have is, let's say one of our salespeople goes out and tries to introduce a new line of product, a new line of glove with a specific customer. What kind of ratio should they be looking at as far as sales? What sells more? Mediums, larges, extra larges? There's usually a rule in the industry. Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Danny, because when you're making recommendations, you're coming across as the product expert. You want to have these kind of details. It makes you look like the product expert, right? So if you're going to a retailer and you're making a recommendation, you usually work from size large up and down. And the way I like to do it is I usually say use a ratio of 2-1-1. So if as you work your way down, or a 3-2-1 ratio working up and down. So there's no hard fast rule for it. Definitely large is by far the most popular selling item, and depending on what environment you're in, sometimes extra large becomes the next best seller, and sometimes medium. So it depends on what kind of glove it is. If it's meant to be high dexterity, mediums will be more popular than extra larges, and it also depends on the supplier. One supplier's extra large is another supplier's double extra large, so sometimes the extra larges sell better than the larges for that reason. There's no steadfast rule, but you can, if you're put to task, a 2-1-1 ratio, usually 2 in terms of large, and then 1 going up and 1 going down, and then after that it becomes very, very small. As you start getting into the smalls and extra smalls and double extra larges and triple extra larges, the ratios go down quite considerably, so it becomes almost a quarter or a half, depending on...
So a 2-1-1 would mean that for every 2 cases of large gloves that I would sell, I would also include 1 case of medium, which is a step down, and 1 case of extra large, which is a step up.
Yeah, so a better way of actually saying it would be 1-2-1.
Yes.
1-to-1 ratio, medium, large, extra large.
Now, globally, what's important for you to understand is Wideco is not a glove manufacturer. Now, what this means is you will encounter in your competition companies that do exclusively gloves. And while you may think that the products that we've presented here in the gloves seem like a lot of options, they're actually very small in comparison to a real glove company, which can carry up to 1,500 different types of gloves. What we say to counter that is we adopted the 80-20 rules, which means that we have pre-selected 20% of the gloves that will give any normal customer 80% of his business. We've done the work for them, so all of the gloves that we have are gloves that are high sellers. Now, because we've done that and we focused on these high sellers, we're also able to get tremendous pricing by ordering container loads at a time. So this means that once we commit with a different product, in this case a glove, we commit all the way. We buy a full container's worth, which assures us the best price possible, a price that can match a glove company in the industry. This has concluded our first section with the gloves. If you have any questions, some of them will be answered in the following ones in the gloves, but we also invite you to speak with your managers or talk to us. Thank you.
Thank you.